Good morning, boys and girls. It's time for preschool. Let's stand up and start with our months of the year song. Can you sing with me? January, February, March, April, May, June, July, August, September, October, November, December. Then we all turn around. January, February, March, April, May, June, July, August, September, October, November, December. Then we all sit down. Great job. Let's go over and take a look at our calendar. Do you remember we moved into a new month? It's the month of May. We just did that song, January, February, March, April, May. May is where we're at, so that spot is empty. And then, oh, look at this. Coming up, it says last day of school. We're going to be done with preschool in just a few more days. And then June and July will be summertime, warm, hot. Maybe you'll get to go play in the sprinkler, enjoy the water. August will still be hot, but that is when kindergarten will start for most of you. And then September, October, November, December, and then we start over again. There is our calendar. All right, today, I see that yesterday was a 3. It was the 3rd. That must mean that today is the 4th. Down to the right, then down once more to make the number 4. Let's go ahead and put that in here. The counting is very easy right now because we just started the new month. 1, 2, 3, 4. Let's go ahead with our days of the week song. Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. And when we follow up from our 3, that would be Sunday. That was yesterday. Today is the 4. And when we follow up from the 4, I see the orange one. It starts with an M. Monday. We are on Monday. I see a matching M for Monday right here. Let's move that over to our calendar. Today is Monday, May 4th. All right, let's take a look out the window and check out our weather. Oh, it is a rainy day. Did any of you hear some thunder this morning? At my house, we even had a little bit of hail, and that's when raindrops way high up in the clouds get thrown way back into the clouds again and again, and it's cold, very cold, way up high in the clouds, and those raindrops get frozen and then frozen again until finally they get too heavy and they fall down. And so there was lots of rain coming down, but also some pieces of ice that's called hail. Thankfully it wasn't too much hail, because that can be very sad for the plants because it's like throwing rocks at the plants. But the rain is so nice. The farmers are probably very thankful that they got some rain today. Helped the wheat grow and the alfalfa and everything else, the soybeans. All right, let's find your right hand and do the Pledge of Allegiance. Put your right hand on your heart and take a look at our flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you for joining in with that. Today we have a new Bible story. This one actually picks up shortly after the Easter ones, where Jesus had been appearing to his disciples. Jesus stayed on earth for 40 days after he rose from the dead. And during that time, he appeared to many disciples and many friends of his. Many people got to witness with their very own eyes that, hey, Jesus is alive again. We heard about Thomas in particular and some of Jesus's other close friends and disciples. Well, 40 days after Easter, Jesus sent his disciples out of Jerusalem to a hill, and he said, I'll meet you there. And he did. And when he got there,
he had several things to tell his disciples. He said, hey, in just a little bit, I'm going to leave. And he meant that they wouldn't see him on earth anymore, not with their own eyes. And he said, but I want you to go back into Jerusalem and wait. The Holy Spirit is going to come and bless you and baptize you with his word. And then I want you to go out and tell the whole world about me. Not just right here in Jerusalem, not just right here in our country. I want the whole world to hear about me. And then Jesus had some amazing promises. He said, I am with you always to the very end of the age. So even when we have strange times like this coronavirus and we have to stay home for days and days, hey, that's okay. Jesus is with us. Even if we have a storm and maybe it worries us just a little bit to hear the thunder, that's okay. Jesus is with us. He promises us, I am with you to the very end of the age. And then while Jesus was speaking, something amazing happened. He just started to rise up. He continued to talk to his disciples and he continued to give them a blessing. But the disciples just stared at Jesus and he went up and up and up and then a cloud covered him. And the disciples were still just staring up thinking, wow. And then suddenly, two angels were there and the angels said, why are you staring up into the sky? Jesus has gone back to heaven and he will come back again someday. The disciples went back to Jerusalem. They were so excited. They knew they had work to do. They went back and they waited for the Holy Spirit to come to them. We won't get to do that story together in class, but that's an amazing story too, called Pentecost. If you get a chance, you should check a Bible storybook or check your Bible and read about that one. Here's a little project. I'm not going to do this one with you, but it's a neat one to help you remember what happened on Ascension. Ascension is the big word for Jesus going back into heaven. Ascend means to go up, so ascension is Jesus going into heaven. This just reminds us this little sticker is a Jesus sticker, and Jesus went up and up and up until he was covered by a cloud. And then Jesus was back in heaven. And at the same time, he's with us everywhere. How can that be? I don't know. My brain's not big enough for that. But God told us it's that way, and so we know it is that way. I have a Bible verse for you with that special promise God gave us, Jesus gave us on Ascension. Here's how it goes. Surely I am with you always to the very end of the age. That's from Matthew 28, verse 20. Can you try it with me? What a special promise. Jesus is with you all the time. Surely I am with you always to the very end of the age. Matthew 28, 20. Oh, thank you, Jesus, for this wonderful promise. And thank you for always keeping your promises and truly being with us. All right, let's put that aside and let's go ahead and move on to our new letter. I'm going to start out with the alphabet song like usual. Let's look up here and start with the letter A. Way back here, we have learned so many letters. Let's see what's next. A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N, O, P, Q, R, S, T, U, V, W, X, Y, Z. Now I know my ABCs. Next time, won't you sing with me? Did you guess that our letter was the letter U? You're correct. We learned the T last time. The letter U looks like kind of a silly smiley face. Very tall smiley face. And the little U looks similar, but you make your tall smiley face and then pull down. Some people also pull down on the big U. I don't mind which way you make it, but either way, that is what the letter U looks like. Now, the letter U is the last of those amazing letters called vowels, A-E-I-O-U, and that means that we don't find many U's at the beginning of words because the vowels
are the ones that stick all the letters together to make our words. So the U can just say U, like unicorn. But the U can also say and that's what it often says in the middle of words is The U says the U says Every letter makes a sound, the U says And I was doing tiptoes because up starts with U. And here's a little project you can draw to help you remember what U says. Now we're gonna make an upside down U and we'll spread it out. More like, it starts like a rainbow, but you can see how that's kind of like a flat U. And then I'm gonna make several little flat U's. Hey, that's starting to look like something. And then if I put a stick down, there is an umbrella. And umbrella starts with U too. So if you remember up, umbrella, the U says That can help you remember it. So the U says and it says U. All these letters make it so hard to read because they have things that they say and then they decide to say something else too. Let's take a look in our can and see what they found for us for the letter U. I wonder if they'll be mostly the U sound or if we'll get some letters in there too. This is the one that I thought of. Unicorn. That starts with a U. Do you know what this is? I see a whisk and a spoon and a spatula and a scraper. All of those together are called utensils. Utensils starts with a U. This is something a soldier might have worn a long time ago. This is called a uniform. Uniform starts with U. They thought of the same one I did. There's a colorful umbrella. Umbrella starts with U. And finally, here's a silly one. I don't know if you've seen this one before. I think maybe if you've seen special performers, maybe a circus. Unicycle. A unicycle is a bike that only has one wheel. Unicycle. Uni means one, which is also why unicorn has one horn. All right, we're gonna put those back in our can. And I wanted to show you that the book that we are going to read later today, just so that you can take a look at it, and perhaps you'd like to look it up on your computer and read it. I won't read it to you right now, but it's called The Day the Goose Got Loose. I also wanted to show you this funny thing. We've learned all these letters, T-H-E, but it doesn't say T or H or E. This is the word you're gonna see all over the place in every book you read, and it's just the. Why on earth does that say the? I don't know, but that's what, when we read T-H-E, it's the. So the day the goose got loose, and goose loose. Yeah, we have rhyming words in this book again. It's a pretty silly book. If you look at it, looks like we have a goose, and he's certainly on the loose. Oh, and it looks like he's causing trouble. Maybe you'll have time to read that one later on your computer. All right, I would like to teach you a little bit about a square this morning. Now, not too long ago, we learned about a rectangle. Do you remember how many sides a rectangle had? 4. And what was special about a rectangle is that we had 2 long sides and 2 short sides. A square also has 4 sides, but they are all the same length. But there's something else that's special about a square. All 4 sides, none of them tip at all. So if you tipped some of the sides, even though they're the same length, now that they're tipped, that's not called a square anymore. That's a special shape called a rhombus. Or if you tip them a different way, you get a diamond. So there's lots of shapes that can have 4 sides and even have 4 sides that are the same, but they're only called a square if none of them are tipped. And actually, even when you listen to adults or builders, they talk about if something is square, and they don't always mean the shape. They're talking about if one part is perfectly flat and the other part is perfectly straight, like a floor and a wall, they'll say it's square, and it means nothing tips. So you might even hear an adult use the word square, and it wouldn't mean the shape, but it would be talking about the corner. That makes the square unique. Hey, unique. That's another U word. All right, I'd like to show you a square that you could work on today. If you got a folder from me, you have one of these squares waiting for you. And if you didn't get a folder, you could probably make one of these squares. I took some heavier paper and I cut it into a square. And then I used a hole punch to put punches or holes through all around the edge. Then I tied a piece of yarn to it. And here's what we're going to do. We're going to do something called lacing. I'm going to come from the bottom when I lace. So I'm going to take my yarn and I put a little piece of tape on the end, because otherwise sometimes the yarn wants to come apart, and that can be frustrating when you're trying to push the yarn through. But I'm going to push my yarn up and pull and pull and pull until it goes all the way through. And then I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to go up and pull all the way through. Now, if I started by going up through that first hole, I need to keep coming up through every next hole. And if it gets a little twisted, just push it into its spot. But don't go down through the next hole. If you go down, then it changes the pattern. It doesn't look the same. So let's make sure that each hole you do, you're going up through the hole and pull the yarn all the way through. Up and pull all the way through. Up, pull all the way through. And you can go all the way around. When you get all the way around your project, you have a couple of options. You can choose to just leave it alone and not do anything else. And then later, if you would like, you can come and unlace it. You can pull your yarn back out, and then you have another project to do. You can keep relacing it as many times as you would like. Or you can tape off the yarn on the back or tie it off, and then you can use this as a little frame. You could draw a picture of something in the middle, or you could even take a picture of yours and put it in the middle, and this would make a cute frame. Or maybe you could say this is a block of a quilt. And that is the next thing I'm going to talk to you about. Today, we are not doing just one letter. We get to do 2 letters today, because way back before I started teaching on spring break, I counted up how many days I was teaching. There were 24. Did you know there are 26 letters in the alphabet? I only had 24 days, but I had 26 letters I wanted to teach. So I picked a few days to put 2 letters on, and today is one of those days. And here is why I'm doing that. We learned the letter U just now. But I mentioned the word quilt. We are also going to do the letter Q today, and there's a reason for that. Let's come back over here to the board, and let's take a look at our board again. I'm going to erase my squares, and I'm going to show you first what a Q looks like. A Q starts like an O, but then it gets a little tail on the bottom. That makes it a Q. And the little q, the lowercase q, starts like an A would start. But here's it's tricky. It doesn't go that way. That would make it a G. Its tail goes that way, and that makes it a Q. And here is something amazing. Did you know that Q almost never appears without his buddy, the U? So that's why we're doing Q and U today. I have just kind of a funny little poem, and it just says, Q and U, they stick like glue. Now here's the rule, you know it's true, that if you start a word with Q, make sure you follow with a U. Just about every word you're gonna see, except for maybe the name of a country or two, is going to start with, if it's got a Q, it will have a U. And then we can sing this song. The Q says qua, the Q says qua. Every letter makes a sound. The Q says qua. But the Q can only say qua if he's with his buddy U. Isn't that interesting? I do have some pictures for you again. Let's take a look and see what we have. I have the picture of, any idea what kind of bird this is? Quail. And if we look at the back, sure enough, Q-U, quail. All right, let's see. Oh, what would you call a lady who's a ruler and wears a crown? A queen. And yep, check the back again. Q-U, queen. All right, and then, oh, this is the one that I just was talking about, a quilt. That's a nice blanket. We'll talk more about a quilt in just a minute. Quilt, check it, Q-U, quilt. Always Q going out with his buddy. He's gotta always stick around with his friend. Question mark, have you seen one of these? If you have a question to ask and you're doing some writing, you put this at the end of your words, question mark. Yep, question, Q and U. They're good friends. Oh, what's this boy telling us? He's saying be quiet. Q and U, quiet. And the last one I have in here. Nope, it's not a penny. This is one of the coins that's a little bit bigger. Quarter. And this is actually a magnet quarter. It will stick to my board right there. And that also starts with Q and U. I want to talk to you a little bit more about that special blanket that they had a picture of here, a quilt. A quilt is kind of cool because it's not made of one big piece of fabric like a blanket is. A quilt is made of lots of squares. That's why I said you could pretend your lacing square was a quilt. I actually have a special blanket here made by a lady in my family a long time ago. She did not use a sewing machine on this at all. And she made this beautiful quilt. And as you can see, if you look very closely, the edges are its own piece, but all the rest of it are many, many little squares. There's these squares that have the orange and yellow and green and blue flowers, and they're all sewn together with little white squares in between them. And then that made a bigger square. And then they rotated those special squares with more white squares, bigger white squares. And then when she got all done piecing that together, she went back through and used little hand stitches to make it look all soft and beautiful. A quilt is a very long, special project. Today, we are going to do just a little project, and we're going to say Q is for quilt. But your quilt won't be nearly as involved as this one. This one would take you days and days and probably even weeks to finish, even if you used a sewing machine. A quilt is a very big project. We're just going to make a simple quilt, and here is what I'm going to have you do. Again, if you got a folder from me, you have these pieces at your house. If not, maybe your mom or dad or grandma or someone has some fabric and you can cut out little squares. Now, to make a real quilt, you would line up all your squares right next to each other, and that would form the look of a quilt. But instead of making a square right over our Q, I thought you could just take some glue and glue your squares wherever you would like around the letter Q. And then, it's not a real quilt, but it has a little bit of a look of a quilt, and it will help you remember that that's what a quilt is. Squares of fabric that are all sewn together. And up top, we have the reminder. Q is for quilt. There it is. Q and U, best friends. Can't ever go out by themselves if they're gonna make a word, Q has to have U with him. All right, so Q is for quilt. You can work on that at your home if you would like. And then I have one more thing for you. We're going to do some experiments this week in preschool. And here's the experiment I have for you. It has to do with flowers. It has to do with how flowers grow. Now, I've never done this experiment with this kind of flower. This kind of flower is a daisy. I've only done this with a carnation. So I'm curious to see if this works as well with the daisy as it does with the carnation. But when I went to the store last night, they didn't have any white carnations, so I thought we'd try a daisy. But here is our experiment. I'm going to take a few of these daisies, and I'm going to take my scissors, and in just a moment I'm going to cut them and move them to this water. But first, we're going to do something to this water. This is food coloring. This is not something you should use by yourself because when it gets on your fingers, or especially if it gets on your clothes, it will not wash out. So don't use food coloring by yourself. But if you take some food coloring and drop some in the water, first of all, it's kind of fun to watch the way it goes through the water. It just swirls through. Ooh, that's a cool look. And then I'm actually going to swirl it so that it's all green. All right, now I have green water. I wonder what would happen if I moved my flowers from their clear water into the green water. Well, I can tell you nothing's going to happen right away, but I wonder if over time something would happen. So let's take several of these flowers and place them in our green water. Yep, nothing's happening right now. But I'm going to leave these flowers here, and when we make our video on Wednesday and when we make our video on Friday, we'll take a peek and we'll see if anything has changed. Like I said, I know what happened when I did this with a different kind of fluffy carnation flowers. I'm curious if it will happen with these daisies. Do you have any guesses? What do you think will happen if you put flowers in green water? Well, you think on that, and we'll come back and we'll check on it in a few days, okay? Maybe if you have some flowers around your house and you get permission, maybe you could try cutting some and putting them in some colored water, and you can do this experiment. You don't have to use green. You could use any color you want. All right, boys and girls, I will see you again on Wednesday. I hope you have a great day. Enjoy seeing the rain, and if the sun comes out later, maybe you'll get permission to go and stomp in some puddles. Sometimes that can be fun, but make sure you ask first. All right, have a great day. Bye, boys and girls.